The night it all changed, Maya Lin stood alone on the steps of Widener Library, her breath fogging in the cold Cambridge air. A soft drizzle began to fall, as if the sky itself shared her disquiet. She wrapped her coat tighter and stared out at the crimson banners fluttering in the wind, symbols of a legacy that now felt both proud and precarious. News had just broken. The Trump administration was imposing new visa restrictions, targeting international students like her. Harvard's campus, once a sanctuary of possibility, had turned overnight into a place of whispers and worry. Maya, a senior and the newly elected student body co-president, felt the weight of 20,000 students pressing against her chest. But more than that, she felt the fear. It was everywhere, in the tremble of hands clutching textbooks, in the hurried glances exchanged in hallways, in the unspoken question hanging in the air, what if we're forced to leave? Maya knew this fear intimately. Born in Taiwan and raised in California, she had always lived in a balancing act between two worlds. Her parents had sacrificed everything to bring her to the U.S. when she was 6. Her mother, once a professor, now cleaned offices at night. Her father drove Uber 12 hours a day. They believed in the American dream, and Maya was their proof it was possible. That night, in the sanctuary of the student union, Maya stood before a packed room. International students, allies, professors, and staff, all gathered with eyes full of dread. She didn't have a speech prepared. She had only her truth. "I know you're scared," she began, her voice trembling. "So am I. But fear is not the end of our story, it's the start of our fight." What followed was a whirlwind. She organized emergency legal clinics. She reached out to alumni for temporary housing and legal support. She lobbied university leadership to challenge the policy in court. Her days blurred into sleepless nights. But amid the exhaustion, something incredible happened. People responded. Professors volunteered time. Classmates opened their homes. Local businesses donated meals. The entire Harvard community, fractured by fear, began to fuse together in compassion. Even rival student government leaders from Yale, Princeton, and MIT joined hands to amplify the message. A movement ignited. But the most unexpected moment came from someone Maya never thought she'd inspire. Her roommate, Jenna, a girl from a conservative family in rural Texas, had once said, "I just don't get all this immigration stuff." They'd argued, avoided each other for weeks, even requested room reassignment. But one evening, Jenna found Maya asleep at her desk, surrounded by immigration documents and coffee-stained notes. She covered her with a blanket. The next morning, she brought Maya breakfast. "I read the executive order," Jenna said quietly. "It's wrong. I want to help." Jenna began organizing students to write to their representatives. She arranged calls with local news stations, even convinced her father, a congressman, to hear Maya out. Slowly, minds began to shift. Weeks later, Maya stood on the steps of the Supreme Court, arm in arm with students from across the country. The administration's policy had been blocked by an emergency injunction, pending appeal. It wasn't the end, but it was a reprieve. As cameras flashed and voices chanted, Maya looked around, not just at the students, but at the professors who had marched, the janitors who had stayed late to keep the halls open for organizing, and even Jenna, who had once been indifferent, now carrying a sign that read, "Every student belongs." Maya's eyes welled up. She realized the real fight was never just about policies or visas. It was about humanity. About seeing each other, standing for each other, and remembering that fear doesn't define us, our response does. Back on campus, Maya found her mother waiting with a thermos of hot tea and a proud, tearful smile. "You make us proud," her mother said in Mandarin. "But more than that, you make others brave." In a time of sheer uncertainty and panic, one act of courage had sparked 1,000. Maya didn't just lead, she listened, she lifted, she lived the truth that kindness is power. And somewhere in the hearts of thousands who had once felt invisible, a light flickered on. Not because everything was fixed, but because they now knew they were not alone. In the end, that was the story Maya Lin gave to Harvard, to America, and to the world. When we stand together, no wall, no order, no fear can divide us. Only we can decide how this story ends. And if we lead with love, it ends in hope. Here's your emotional and inspiring story based on the title. It centers on kindness, resilience, and the transformative power of unity and humanity. If you'd like, I can help refine it further or adapt it for other formats like a podcast script or short film.